Hello, welcome back to another Facebook Live. I'm Jess, I'll be hosting again today. And today with us we've got Johnny, and we've also got Jacqueline in the background who'll be looking up for some of your questions. We're based here in the Sociology Department, so do send us in your questions about what it's like to apply for, study, and then graduate from sociology. But Johnny, would you like to introduce yourself a bit more fully?
Of course. So thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
So I'm a lecturer in the Department of Sociology,
Okay.
and I've been here for a very long time as a postgraduate, and I now work here. So I teach undergraduate students across the curriculum, across the sociology degree, and I'm also the admissions tutor for the BA in sociology programme. So
Great.
I have a lot of insight into some of the concerns and thoughts and kind of questions that will hopefully be coming out of today's session.
Brilliant, so now's our chance to sort of tap into that insight. So if you do have any questions about what it is like to study sociology, or what it's like the application side of things, do send them in. As we have in the past couple of days, we've got some set questions which we'll be asking, and then I'll be following your questions on screen. So shall we just start with our first question, whatever it might be?
Why not?
Okay, so first up, we have a question. What do exams and assessments look like in your subject?
So I think it's worth saying at this point that the department offers both the sociology programme and also the BA programme in media and cultural studies. And really one of the things that we've tried to do within the department over the past few years is make sure that across both of those degrees we have a really wide range of different assessment and kind of forms of examination built into the degree. So we're not kind of constantly asking our students to write these really long and scary kind of essays, but we're trying a whole range of different and hopefully really inventive ways of assessing our students. So for example, I run a third year course where we use a mix of different kind of imaginative scenarios. We get our students writing about what their life will be like in 50 years' time, as a way of kind of tapping into what the future of society will look like. So we're not sticking with these kind of rigid and very boring kind of essays, but we're trying to play with that a little bit. It's worth saying that we have within, and this is more relevant to our media and cultural studies degree, but within that we have a whole range of practice-based learning and assessments. So, for example, in some of the assessments within that we have opportunities, for example, to make a viral video on platforms like Twitter and Instagram, as a bit of a kind of working practice to see what actually producing this media is like. In other cases we have students grouping together to try and form their own kind of mini social movement on campus around a specific issue.
Okay.
So we've had all kinds of different methods for trying to assess our students, and hopefully it makes the degree that much more engaging, I think, rather than constantly asking for the same thing.
Yeah,
over and over
definitely.
again.
A lot of those you mentioned there sound a lot more creative than I imagined, and very different, and I've never really come across those before. So what kind of examples have you got of, you're talking about viral videos, trying to create one of those, and also, what was the other one you just mentioned there?
Kind of mini kind of social movements.
Yeah, so
example.
what kind of things have come up in the past?
Sure. So one of the with the social movements module, which is a third year module, but a really popular one, and within that an example would be something like a group of students kind of campaigning for a shift to electronic marking.
Right.
So often when we're at university, we have all of these, different bits of paper and millions of essays kind of printed off and stuff like that. So one of the groups, which was actually successful a couple of years ago, was getting the department to move to electronic submissions. You don't have to print anything off. We're not wasting all of that paper. We're submitting everything online and marking all of the assessments online. And providing that. And so this was put forward by some students a couple of years ago, and it was successful. And now we only work with the electronic and digital.
So it actually made like an impact.
Absolutely.
That's
yeah,
really cool.
yeah. Completely.
Nice
which
one.
is great. So so that would be an example around.
That's a great example. I think one thing we've been asking as a follow-up to these kind of questions is, how do you think this differs from a student who's moving straight out from school to university? They may be used to coursework, some exams and group work. What do you think that shift is like?
Yeah, I think it's quite a common concern, and I remember kind of first when I was an undergraduate, kind of having that shift, and it is obviously we recognise that it can be quite a big shift for a lot of students, because typically at A level and even at GCSE we see, generally speaking, quite a prescriptive kind of take. I think it's fair to say, and often that shift to university is a bit scary because there's a bit more freedom in terms of what we're looking for, and hopefully that comes through when we're talking about the kinds of assessments that we work with. But we make sure that when we're asking for these kind of weird and wacky forms of assessment, like making your own social movement or imagining your life in 50 years' time, that we don't kind of push our students in at the deep end, so to speak. So we provide a lot of kind of feedback and one-to-one support for our students, and this ensures that this is both built into the kind of modules that anyone kind of wanting to come to Lancaster will experience, but also kind of one-to-one time with tutors and lecturers like myself as part of the kind of everyday life here, as well as opportunities within the degree programmes to spend time together with kind of fellow students on these programmes, and to find ways to actually mitigate some of these initial challenges. So for example, in our BA Sociology programme that we have behind us, we have a new programme this year which I'm co-running with a couple of colleagues of mine, called the Experiencing Sociology programme. And this is kind of peer-based, so students working together to try and get used to or find these kind of spaces where they can talk over and have kind of chats about how best to approach these different forms of assessment, how to respond to the kind of feedback that they get from their tutors and lecturers, and really move forward with their academic advancement as they go beyond beyond their first year, into their second year and beyond. So there's plenty of support networks there, and I think once you're over some of the initial hurdles as a university student, then really I find that most of my students really embrace this kind of freedom to be a bit more creative, be a bit more imaginative with their work. Yeah,
great. That's good to know, because like all these different, quite new forms of assessment to some students, whilst they sound exciting, it is a big step, but it's nice to know that they're supported in every aspect of that. Great, so that's great to hear. For those who have just joined us, we've just been chatting about forms of assessment in sociology and what those look like, but also what support you'll be getting. So if you are watching this after the live event, you can scroll back and find out more about that. So what we'll do then is we'll move on to our next topic, or our question.
Absolutely.
Which is, I accidentally picked out two there. The question is, what advice would you give to young people studying their GCSEs who are unsure what they'd like to study in the future? So this one's maybe a bit more personal sort of, what advice?
A bit more general in a way.
Yeah.
I think that, there are a few things that I would say on this front. I think that obviously one of the kind of purposes of this video is to get a sense of what studying sociology would be like, but my feeling is, when I'm talking to a lot of young people in these kind of positions, studying their GCSE, studying their A-levels, is not close down any options in advance. So don't feel like, regardless of what anyone tells you when you're looking at universities, don't feel like you have to kind of rush into any decision. And there's a lot of kind of support there in terms of trying to get a sense of the right decision to make, because it's obviously a big one, whether that's people like groups like kind of Hello Future, for example, but really kind of consider your options. I think that it's an interesting one to think of in terms of the sociology program, because a lot of the time a lot of our students haven't got a background in the discipline.
Yeah.
And a lot of our students tend to arrive here to study our degree. Like myself, I didn't study this before I went to university. I didn't have the option to do so. And now I teach it. So I would really encourage students to kind of follow what interests them, and not to kind of automatically presume that because they're doing best in a certain discipline within their GCSEs, within a certain subject, that they need to follow that, or need to close down any other kind of options or other kind of routes.
Yeah, so keeping those options open, really, in a sense. I'd be interested, because you were talking about how you went on to study sociology, but you hadn't had a chance to do that in the past. So how did you choose what subject you wanted to study?
Sure. So in my case, and I think this is the case for a lot of applicants that we have to our department, I kind of came to sociology from a background in communication studies and geography at A-level. And I kind of saw between those subjects, and I think this is quite common for people applying to our department, they could see that sociology, this kind of study of society, often at quite a broad kind of level, was something that really interested them. But it didn't feel like these kinds of disciplines like communication studies or geography, business, a lot of the time, it didn't feel like they ever quite got to grips with some of those bigger questions on why society acts like it does. And so for me, and I think this is the case for a lot of our students, this is what sociology is, ultimately, the study of society and all of its strange dynamics and all of the strange things that happen in society. The chance to ask those bigger questions, but in a way that isn't so abstract as to be kind of philosophical. So a lot of hence why we're talking about things like social movements, things that people are doing in the everyday, a lot of kind of everyday concerns that people have, and that's what the discipline kind of provides. It's a gap, as it were, hopefully a really good gap for a lot of people to kind of fill.
Oh, right. I liked how you put that sort of reading between those subjects. Like there was aspects of those that obviously so might have just touched upon some sociology aspects, but it's looking at the wider picture.
Absolutely.
Oh, right. You make me want to study it now. Finding that at the end of each of these Facebook Lives, and it's like, oh wow.
I can imagine.
You learn a lot more about these subjects. Great. So if you have just tuned in, we've just been chatting about what advice would be given to students who are maybe unsure what subjects they want to choose in the future. And we've just heard from Johnny's personal experience how you chose the subject and where you found your interest in that. I think that might be a good point to mention that there are some open days coming up, because we were talking about keeping your options open and then using opportunities to explore these interests. So you can go to www.lancaster.ac.uk/study/open days, and then you can actually go to the university and find out a bit more about these subjects and also what it might be like to live here. So those dates are the 29th of June, 13th of July, and then there's two, so there's in September, which is the 7th and the 14th. So do check those out, and I will be putting these links below later. As I've just seen, we have had a question coming up, which is from Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. What kind of modules are included in a degree? So, maybe what subject topics might come up?
Of course, So there's a really broad range of modules that you can take throughout your degree, and Lancaster is, I think it's fair to say, very diverse in the kinds of subjects that we might be looking at as part of the degree. So we have a whole kind of range, and it's very flexible as a degree program. So the first year, for example, we look at topics in the first year of the sociology degree, including things like the study of consumption, why do people buy the things that they do. We look at at some kind of classical perspectives. We look at some really kind of key figures like Sigmund Freud and some kind of classical sociological thinkers. And as you go out kind of through the degree, as it were, you get more options to kind of create and tailor your academic trajectory. So some of the second year modules look at everything from feminism. We have a strong kind of gender studies background in the department. There are subjects looking at big and very kind of prominent concerns today, the sociology of climate change.
Okay.
We have subjects, the course that I teach at third year level, which looks at the future of society, what the future will be like in 50 or 100 years' time.
Yeah.
We have people looking at the sociology of consumption and advertising. You know, what role does advertising play in modern society?
Okay.
We have a lot of different kinds of topics.
It sounds quite varied between some of the traditional things like talking about classical sociologists, but then also those things that are very current and that you hear, that you can't, switch the telly on without hearing about.
Absolutely.
So that's really interesting.
So we have a lot of those, as I say. We've got a really, in the department, there are lots of academics here who are really kind of experts in the field, teaching around a lot of stuff that you can see when you go onto any kind of news websites kind of today, whether that is topics like climate change, but also big questions around class and inequality, those kinds of real challenges that I think society are facing now. We have a lot of people at Lancaster who are trying to kind of analyse and consider those dynamics from a sociological point of view, and hopefully building a lot of that interest back into teaching for our undergraduate students within the department.
Oh, great! So it's coming from their interest as much as the students.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. I think something worth mentioning, because it's come up in the past couple of Facebook Live sessions, is the Part 1 at Lancaster. Now I'm aware you can study up to 3 subjects, is it? What does that tend to look like for sociology students?
Yeah, of course. So we, in terms of that Part 1, so what our students would be studying in their first year, for a sociology student on the degree programme, we'd have the introduction to sociology.
Okay.
Which is a really popular course for people across the university, really, not just people who are on our degree programme. This doesn't presume any prior knowledge for people like myself who went into studying sociology without a background.
So you can go sort of with a fresh start in a sense?
It's completely kind of foundational, so we don't expect people to have an A-level or a GCSE or anything like that in it, which hopefully opens it up to a lot of people. But from then on, in that first year, someone on our degree programme can pick 2 other, what we would term kind of minor subjects. So they'd be majoring in sociology in those 2 minor subjects. So we have a lot of people that will combine that with media and cultural studies in our department, also our gender and women's studies course. And so 3 in total across the year. Other students will kind of mix sociology with, we have quite a lot of people who go and do things like marketing, English, history, all kinds of psychology, all kinds of management. I mean, we have all kinds of different mixes for people in their first year. And this seems to be really popular, and I think this is what's really nice about Lancaster, is that because we recognise that is a big decision to make in terms of what subject any student will be studying in their first year, we do have quite a lot of flexibility built in, which I think is really nice, in terms of if anyone gets to the end of their first year and they say, no, actually I think the subject that they minored in was something that I found much more interesting, would much prefer to study for the next 2 years, then we're very flexible in terms of students kind of switching to different degrees. And,
Yeah.
we have a lot of people who end up kind of doing sociology as a minor kind of subject and end up switching to it and spending the rest of their time at university in our department. So Lancaster's very flexible on that front, which I think is nice because it takes a bit of the pressure off, I think, in terms of that decision.
Then it sort of caters to each student because each student comes in with completely different interests. It's nice to know that they can pick a few things to explore because I know I've mentioned this in previous sessions. I graduated from Lancaster myself, and in my first year I studied English literature as my major, and then I had gender and women's studies and history as a minor, and I absolutely loved it because gender and women's studies, it complemented so much that I was studying elsewhere, and so it's your chance to mix and match some really interesting subjects. So definitely check those out. As I said, the Lancaster website's a great chance to look at those things because you can look at some of those courses, so what extra subjects you might be interested in, and that's lancaster.ac.uk. So that's a great chance to explore that. So we'll move on to our next question then. I'll just mention that Jacqueline is typing in some of those links there, so any that we mention you can just scroll down to the comments and click on if you want to explore that, or book yourself an open day. But we'll see what's up next. So next we have, how competitive is the application process to your subject?
Sure. So we have, in terms of thinking about what we would expect in terms of a typical offer, we for the sociology program we would tend to ask for ABB.
Okay.
And that means that whilst our kind of grade kind of expectations are relatively high, and hopefully that kind of mirrors the how good the degree program is.
Yeah.
Hopefully. It's reasonably competitive, but we try and make sure that, given that we are rapidly expanding the campus, the campus is stretching out ever further, and we're building the Health Innovation Campus, which will provide a lot more teaching space.
Oh, great.
We try and ensure that everyone who applies and meets that grade offer will be given a place. Typically, in the past few years, in terms of the number of sociology majors that we have in our department, that's somewhere between about 30 or 40 or so, as a kind of cohort. And we find that is quite a nice number in terms of people being able to know one another and ensure that there's a good collegial kind of atmosphere on these courses, which I remember studying as an undergraduate and walking into these massive kind of lecture theatres and feeling like there were millions of people there.
And getting lost in the crowd in a sense.
Absolutely. At Lancaster, hopefully we strike a nice kind of balance in terms of that academic quality and the quality of the course with that nice and hopefully quite friendly atmosphere, which we think is conducive for learning.
It makes it so much better, doesn't it? It's definitely an environment that you're learning. That's great. Brilliant. So that was a really great answer to that. So if you do have any further questions about entry requirements, so you said it was ABB, if there are any other questions about the application process or entry requirements, do send them in. But for now, we'll move on to the next question. So next up, we have the question is, what current research is taking place in your department and how does this impact the course?
Sure. So I've said a little bit already about a lot of our the academics in the department, myself included in that. We try and ensure that a lot of our research, a lot of our hopefully quite timely and quite important research is kind of built into our interests as we're teaching. We have, as I've kind of mentioned already, a whole range of different academics working in different areas. So one of our kind of key areas at the minute, we have about 10 new academic staff starting in the next academic year, who are all working on the topic of social inequality.
Okay.
So we we often see these kind of headlines in the paper about social inequality getting worse, and I think I can really speak for myself here. Often we don't really dig any deeper than that. We don't necessarily look at what that actually means and what impact that kind of has on society. So one of our kind of key areas there would be looking at social inequality in this sociological way, exploring the kind of consequences for people's everyday life. And as I say, that's something that as a department we're really trying to foster more of that kind of critical engagement, because it seems to be something which a lot of students actually end up kind of writing about and discussing and spending a lot of their degree focusing on here at Lancaster. And I think that's because it is such an important topic. As I say, that isn't to say that that's the only kind of topic that we kind of focus on. We have a whole kind of range of different approaches. As Jess has already said, we have our Gender and Women's Studies course, so we have a strong kind of history of feminist kind of thought within the department, which is really great and available to first years as a minor course. And we also have a wide range of people researching, so say things like climate change, but also the more maybe kind of challenging questions. Not that the other ones aren't challenging, but some of the bigger questions about, for example, interactions between science and technology in society. So what does it mean for people to do things like these personalised kind of DNA reports and things like that, and what are the impacts of having that kind of data available on society? What are the impacts of having new forms of social media? I mean, we're sat here on Facebook now. What kind of impacts are these developments having on society? So those are some of the kind of big areas, I think. As I say, quite broad areas, but with some kind of really key figures within all of those kinds of disciplines that our academics are looking at, developing into their teaching.
And as a student, you do get to work in this environment with these people who are exploring these very current projects. So it's great for students to be able to tap into that and get some of that information. So brilliant. Great. So as you have seen in the comments below, we've got some extra links that are coming up, so you can just explore a little bit about the courses that are available at Lancaster and any information about those courses. So do check those out below. And if you have just joined us, we've just been chatting a little bit about the research that takes place in the department here. So all that sociology research that is taking place and all those different projects. So you can find out more about that if you want to scroll back and listen to that. But what we'll do is we'll move on to the next question and see what that brings up. So this one's looking at alumni and people who have graduated. So what are your previous students doing now? And what successes have alumni had from the department?
Yeah, sure. So the nice thing about a kind of sociology degree, and it's quite interesting looking. I mean, it's always great to see where our graduates kind of end up. And I think it's fair to say they end up all over the place, working in all kinds of different sectors and fields. We have a lot of our students end up in roles, in a lot of public sector roles. So we have a lot of our students, once they finish, enter kind of civil service and areas like this. We also have a lot of our students go on to teaching roles, so teaching in secondary schools. But when I say it's diverse, I mean it's really diverse. We have people working for a whole range of non-governmental organisations, charities. A lot of our graduates choose to go down kind of grad scheme routes with some of the bigger kind of corporations, more traditional kind of roles. And Lancaster has a really good careers service. I think the level of support is really quite astonishing. And so many of my students over the past few years that I've been here have really spoken so highly about the career service, which has won all kinds of awards and things like that. The level of support that they offer is fantastic. So we try, although it's not always the easiest thing to do, try and give our students a sense of what they might do after their degree, and try and build a bit of a dialogue with the career service on campus in terms of what students might like to do after. They provide all kinds of support, looking over CVs, looking over applications, doing things like practice interviews for any job applications and things like that. And hopefully that level of support it kind of shows in our employment figures. We have something like 95% of our students end up in employment or further education after 6 months of graduating. So the opportunities, I think, for a degree in our department are really diverse, which I think is really nice.
And I think that combined with, you're talking about how diverse the destinations of these students are, that they can go in to plenty of different sectors. Combined with the great career service that you've got here, a student can come here and study, whether they have an idea of what they'd like to do after uni or whether they don't. So it sounds like there's a bit of breathing room for that in a sense. And well supported.
Absolutely.
Great.
I think, as I kind of said at the beginning, we fully realise that kind of step to university is such a big decision, but there are so many different kind of support networks there in terms of thinking about the options after. And obviously one of the things which I didn't mention is we actually have, seem to keep on bumping into them in the corridors of our department. We have so many of our students who stay around for master's degrees or even PhDs and things like that, which is really wonderful to see. So we have a lot of people seem to stay on for further study because they've enjoyed their undergraduate degree so much in the department. So that's really, really nice to see.
There is, Who knows, you might just come to Lancaster and never want to leave, so there's always opportunity for it. Brilliant. So for those of you who have just tuned in, we've just been chatting about what students who study sociology tend to go on to do after uni. So what jobs might they get into, or what other opportunities are out there, as well as what careers support is here at Lancaster. So if you do want to find out more about that, you can find out a bit about the career service on the Lancaster University website. But for now, we'll move on to another question and see what that brings up there. This one's quite a small little piece of paper. Okay, so it fits in a bit to entry requirements because you were saying that you look for an A, B, B, those 3 grades. But this question is, what subjects would you expect applicants to study? So are there any specific subjects that they need to look into? Or?
Of course. So we tend to find that our students come from very broad backgrounds in terms of what they've done previously. So because, as I say, in my case, when I went to study sociology as an undergraduate, my sixth form didn't offer sociology as a degree, as a subject at A level. So I wasn't able to study it beforehand. And a lot of the time we do have students with all kinds of academic backgrounds who know they're really kind of fascinated to study the mechanisms of society, as it were, but haven't had the opportunity to do so, or haven't quite had the opportunity to kind of confront it head on. So we have a lot of, as I say, with that in mind, we don't have any specific requirements in terms of what subjects anyone has studied beforehand. As you would probably expect, we have a lot of our students have A levels in the kind of humanities and social sciences. We have people from studying A levels in things like business and history and economics and English and
it's quite a wide range.
Really, I mean, this is I think what makes sociology so nice. It interlinks with all of these subjects in hopefully a really productive way. And so we don't presume any kind of prior academic background
great.
on that front. So it's very open.
Yeah, that's really useful to know for applicants, just to know, that they maybe don't need a specific set of subjects or anything. Great. So for anyone who's just tuned in, we've just been chatting about what subjects you might be expected to study at A level to get into university and study sociology. And the answer is that we expect a broad range of things, which is brilliant. So for now, we'll move on. After that question, we have: are there any work experience opportunities on your course?
Absolutely. So that's it's very timely actually, because we're was talking to a colleague of mine about this the other day.
Okay.
So we are kind of building on often the necessity, I think it is, of a lot of students to do kind of work experience.
Okay.
In this kind of job market, then I think it's fair to say that anyone who can kind of get ahead of the curve, as it were, is going to do, can really benefit from taking advantage of these opportunities. And so with that in mind, and kind of responding to the desires of some of our students over the past few years, we're in the process, and this is kind of running for the first time for the 2019 academic year, so beginning in October. We're running both of our sociology and media and cultural studies degree with placement years built in. So the new option is that we have a kind of year in between the second and third year, or what would turn the degree into a 4-year programme. But within that placement year, kind of sandwich year, our students can go and take on a whole variety of different work experience opportunities. Over the years, we've had many students who have arranged this on a kind of ad hoc basis, and they've done everything from kind of go abroad to places as far-flung as New Zealand and things like that, which sounds great. We've had people who have done work experiences more kind of closer to home, so working with companies in Manchester, for example. We've had some students who have gone and done a few different placements in a few different sectors. So 3 months in one kind of company, 3 months in another.
So I've tried a few things.
Absolutely. And so this new degree, the 4-year version of it, tries to make that opportunity open to everyone.
Oh, great.
Though it's worth saying that those kind of opportunities are still very much available to anyone who would be doing the traditional kind of 3-year degree. So the career service on campus that I've already talked about, the career service advertise a whole range of different internships and different kind of part-time job opportunities, graduate opportunities, and things like that. So many of our students use the kind of summer holidays to get some of this really valuable experience of internships and the like. And hopefully as a department we do support that and ensure that students can kind of take advantage of these opportunities.
So plenty of chances to start, build up those skills that you are learning in your subject, and just give them some evidence as well for when you get out of university. Yeah, definitely. Great. Sorry.
I was going to say we also have a departmental kind of careers tutor.
Oh, great.
And we have internships. In some cases even available with the university itself.
Oh, perfect.
So it wouldn't, any of these internships that I talk about, they wouldn't necessarily mean travelling vast distances. They can be a lot closer to home, but still really valuable experience and great to have on your CV for entering the world of work.
And nice to know that, based on your own preference, you can take these elsewhere. Like you can go out. Or you can just stay within the university. Great. So if you have just tuned in, we've just been talking about work experience opportunities on the course, and how making it placement year, was that what it was called?
Yeah.
A new placement year being added, but also the existing support of the long-standing careers service here, as well as the departmental careers advisor that they've got here. So plenty of chances to build up those skills for the world of work. Great. We haven't had any new questions coming in, but we have got one left in the bowl there. Before we get to that, I'd like to just draw your attention. We've been talking a little bit about life after university and what that might look like, but we've also got some money advice here for life after school and life during university as well. So this is advice to what student finance looks like, but money advice even outside of student finance. So it's a great chance to just get a look into what kind of things you might need to be looking into finance-wise in the future. And that's the piggy bank guide, and you can find that as well on the website, which is www.thepiggybank.org.uk, and that's just a great chance to see, outside of the studying part of university, what the life skills part of it might look like, really, sort of looking after yourself and looking after your money. Great, hopefully that's given you a break from answering a load of questions. We do have one more here. I'm not sure which one it is, so let's hope it's a good one to end on. And that is, what do you look for in a personal statement? And there's a sort of part B to this question, which is, what activities, reading or opportunities could young people get involved in now to boost their interest in the subject?
Sure. I mean, in terms of the, so I spend a lot of my time in my role as the admissions tutor on the sociology programme reading people's personal statements.
Great.
So first of all, don't listen to anyone that says we ignore them, because we definitely don't.
Great, so you're the perfect person to answer this question. That's great.
So I spend a lot of time reading our wonderful kind of applicants and reading their personal statements. What we would look for, and I don't want to be too prescriptive on that front, because they are, because as I say, we do have applicants from a whole range of different backgrounds, both academic and both kind of upbringing and the like. We have all kinds of people applying to study with us, so that reflects in their kind of personal statement. But really, what we'd be looking for would be a kind of passion or a sense of conviction that this is really what they want to study. So explaining their kind of personal motivations for why they've considered sociology. We don't need to kind of do personal statements as these big kind of bragging games of I've done this and that. We just want to see some kind of evidence of how our applicants have arrived at the decision to study. We can be perfectly honest on this front. They are really tough things to write, so I would encourage anyone kind of watching to, if they have these opportunities in their school or sixth form, to try and get some advice. But really, I would say focusing on their reasons for actually wanting to study the subject. So many of our applicants will have kind of prior experience with it, having studied it at A-level or GCSE, but if they're not, if they haven't had those opportunities like myself, or if they're doing a different route, like a BTEC or things like that, then really what we just want to see is that sense of how they arrived at their decision and why they think they would benefit from studying within our department. Yeah,
I think that's really valuable advice, that, because I think if you can, honestly and openly write about why you're wanting to study a subject, that'll show that it's a genuine passion for you. I know when I got round to writing my personal statement, I'd quickly changed my mind to the fact that I wanted to study English, and suddenly it became so much easier to write about because it was something that I was really passionate about and I wanted to study. So keeping it honest.
Really embrace it on that front. And the kind of second part of the question, in terms of familiarising yourself with some of those kind of interesting debates and things like that. I think because sociology is so broad as a discipline, and because almost anything and everything can be looked at from a sociological viewpoint, I think often we see students kind of mentioning books that they've read that they found resonated with something that they see in society.
Okay.
And these can be all kinds of different topics. As I say, anything and everything really. But finding if there's something that you've studied in any other discipline that doesn't have to be sociology, something that really resonates with something that you kind of see in your everyday life as something a bit weird, or you want to kind of question a bit further, or try and understand why that's how the world seems to be. Then some kind of evidence of how a book, newspaper, article, something you've seen online, something you've even seen on Facebook, how that prompted you to think a bit further about whatever this issue is, I think would be really a kind of great way of thinking about what we would want to see in a personal statement.
That's really important, that, because I think sometimes we can maybe view personal statements as, you know, a reading list checkbox, or you know, what are the books that a typical sociologist would read? Whilst, you know, if you look at it like that, thinking, you know, what articles or books or what's prompted you to think about, you know, the wider world or society? So that could be anything.
I think that's it, isn't it? And often I kind of tend to read personal statements where people, and I think it kind of really does make sense to do it. They kind of drop in these names of quite general kind of textbooks, things like that. And often actually, just to be awkward, of course, though with good reason, tend to find that the kind of textbooks available for a subject like sociology tend to kind of speak to an A-level kind of level in terms of the kind of questions that are asked and the topics that are covered. But beyond that, we don't have a kind of prescriptive textbook that we rely upon for this discipline, because it is so broad. So really we just want some of that kind of passion or that kind of interest to come through in the personal statement. Why is this how it is? Rather than kind of looking at these quite general textbooks, which we all know, but we don't really look at universities. We're hoping to kind of go beyond that. And if you can convey that kind of interest or that passion, then that's absolutely wonderful to see. So many of the kind of students that I've read over the past few years, reading their kind of personal statements, you then kind of meet in the department a few months later, and it's great to see their interest develop, and hopefully they actually get an answer to some of these questions that they have. Those first kind of questions that they posed in their CV, and in their application even, and in their kind of personal statement.
Great. Brilliant. It's been great to hear that from, you know, an actual person behind their personal statements. I think sometimes it can be overlooked, and you know, just know that there is someone behind these personal statements on the, you know, receiving end. Brilliant. So that's coming around to the end of our questions, and that's coming up to our time as well. So that's been brilliant. That's touched on a lot of subjects about applying for, studying, and then after graduating from sociology. So thank you for all of your advice. It's been great, you know, to have all your information. Do you have any last comments to anyone who might be watching?
Sure. I mean, nothing too specific, but if you have any further questions, then we have a kind of departmental Twitter account, which is just, if you just search for Sociology Lancaster, you'll find it, and we're very happy to, if you kind of send a message on that platform, or equally through our Facebook page. Again, search Sociology Lancaster and you'll come up with that quite easily. We're very happy to answer any kind of questions anyone has about the department and what we offer, and do get in touch with Lancaster at the kind of university level, as they, in my experience, have been really supportive in terms of applying, and any other kind of more practical questions that you might have around university life, so on and so forth. So I would say get in touch if you have any other questions. We'd be more than happy to answer them.
Great, and we will put your Facebook and Twitter in the comments below, so you can follow these guys and ask those questions. So thanks very much for being here, Johnny. That is the end of the Facebook Lives for this week, but our next Facebook Live is Monday. and that will be looking at history and studying history at Lancaster. Until then, have a lovely weekend, and thanks for tuning in again. Thank you. Bye.